Hello everybody. Today we're making a little bit of a different kind of video than, you know, making a video about a game, per se. But I mean, it is a video about a game, but it's not, we're not playing the game. So today we're just working in Hammer, and I'm going to be showing you we're just going to be talking about, some Hammer development tactics and some things that I like to do while working on these maps, or some ideas I might come up with, and you'll also see like how I kind of build these maps. And obviously this texture scheme isn't amazing, but it'll work for right now, as we kind of learn what we want to have in this map. But essentially this map in particular that I'm working on is supposedly meant to introduce like a puzzle to the player to kind of slow down the gameplay. And that's kind of the idea of puzzles in video games, is you want to kind of slow the pacing of the game if there's too much combat. And I mean, particularly in games that even allow for puzzles. Like, I mean, if you just have Call of Duty or something, I mean, even Call of Duty nowadays has puzzles with like lockpicking and stuff. I mean, I haven't been playing the newest Call of Duties. I'd say the latest I've played is Cold War, and even then I saw like, small things that are puzzle-like, that are not technically puzzles, because I mean, they're not difficult, like lockpicking and stuff. It's more of like a Fallout, or like a Fallout kind of thing. But I'd say the terminal hacking in Fallout is more of a puzzle. So essentially puzzles are used as a way in like Half-Life games per se. Like we're working on today. This is Half-Life. This is Black Mesa. We're working on the Source Engine game. And we're working in its editor, known as the Hammer editor. But we're actually working in an updated version of the editor that somebody else made, thank God. Because the old one really sucks. It's called Hammer++, and this is a very great tool to have if you're a Source Engine modder or developer. Because it has such great features. It has like lighting preview and stuff. And my friend Jimmy McBeltbuckle on Steam, we've been friends for a while now. He showed me how to get this working in BM a while ago, so shout out to him, because without him I wouldn't know how to use or how to even start Hammer++. I wouldn't even have figured out that Hammer++ was a thing, because I usually live under a rock when it comes to the Source Engine developer community. He kind of keeps me up to date on everything, because he keeps track of all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so to get back to what we're talking about, I lose track really easily. Puzzles essentially in Half-Life are kind of used to slow down the game a little bit, to kind of give the player, some pacing. They're meant for pacing, and it allows the player to kind of think about what has happened up to this point. While they're, I mean, usually if a puzzle's really complex, they won't be thinking about that. But if you give them really simple puzzles, they'll be thinking about, the last combat scenario in the back of their head inherently. And that's just kind of natural to most people when playing a first-person shooter, is that they think about just how much combat is happening, because, I mean, they're the one who's dealing with it. They're the one who's dealing with the amount of enemies that you're placing. And if you have too many enemies placed, they're gonna notice it. If there's too many combat scenarios in rapid succession, they're going to notice that, and they're going to take note of that. Maybe if it's like a combat-only game, it would make sense, but in that case, there's going to be some sort of implementation of mechanics that make the combat interesting per every scenario. And for games like this, that is possible, but that's not the goal, because even then it's great to have pacing in between, those kinds of scenarios in itself. Even though each combat scenario you manage to make unique, it's still very nice to have a moment of just not doing combat, if that makes sense, you know? So this map in particular that I'm working on is one of those kinds of maps. I mean, there may be little combat, like versus head crabs or something like that, but there's not going to be any sort of major fighting or anything. I'm going to let the player kind of relax, get through the map, and try and figure out how to solve the puzzle. And this is near the beginning of the game that I'm working on, so a puzzle, we don't want the puzzle to be too difficult, but we do want it to seem unique, because one thing about Black Mesa developers or modders is I've noticed they don't really pay attention a lot to the puzzle aspect of Half-Life. They don't really care for that. They don't think that that's really a big part of making a mod. You know, they kind of need to just play 70 Marines and call it a day. 30,000 combat scenarios. Blue Shift does get it right with the, you know, like I noticed with the train puzzles where you're trying to get the train to go to the correct location. If you've ever played Blue Shift, I recommend you. If you've never played Blue Shift, I recommend you play it. It's free on Steam on the workshop for Black Mesa, and it's great. I haven't played the newest Zen update, but I heard it's spectacular. But anyways, so puzzles are very important. They're actually a lot more important than people make them out to be. And everybody who makes a mod on this game, who makes a big mod, tends to put puzzles into it, but nobody's really making big mods for this game anymore, unfortunately. It's just kind of small maps that have just a shitload of Marines in them, and maybe some dialogue, but the choreography, nobody even uses, like, actual choreography. So it's, like, voice acting. They don't actually get, you know, phenomes to work. And, you know, on my channel, I've made a lot of, videos about Face Poser and how to use it in Black Mesa, and how to utilize choreography to make more interesting maps, so yeah, this map in general is going to be a puzzle map. I'm not going to directly say what the puzzle is, because I don't want my ideas stolen, but that's kind of what today is about. That's what we're working on, is making a map that is based around a puzzle, a pretty simple puzzle. It'll make the player at least think a little bit, but otherwise it's not going to have them be stuck here for over 50 minutes. You don't want that either, because then people get frustrated, and then they give up, and then they don't even want to continue playing. You want to just make it just hard enough that they get that little dopamine rush when they complete the puzzle, that they're like, yeah, you know, this is great, I want to keep going. And that's what Half-Life is all about. That's why I absolutely adore Half-Life and Black Mesa, because... But the thing is, Black Mesa, if you played Black Mesa, you'll realize that there isn't even that crazy of puzzles in itself in Black Mesa. Half-Life 2, there's a bunch of different kinds of physics puzzles that utilize physics in very creative ways. And Black Mesa doesn't really do that. They have puzzles that are kind of static in nature. Black Mesa does have some interesting ones, but they're just based off of the ones that you see in Half-Life 1. There's no real puzzles that utilize the physics engine, like Half-Life 2 does, or its episodes, which is kind of disappointing. And I believe that Black Mesa should be utilizing Source to its fullest abilities, because that's what the idea of Black Mesa was, is that it was going to be, it's a Source engine mod that is based around, you know, recreating Black Mesa, or Half-Life 1, I mean, in the Source engine, and utilizing all of the Source engine's features. And one of the biggest things about the Source engine was the physics. The physics is like one of the most important parts about it. So, and most of the puzzles you see in Black Mesa are just they're either you know, the wire connecting puzzles that you see in episode 2, or they're simple like water level puzzles, with like a interpolating water plane that kind of rises as you turn on, you know, certain vents and stuff that allow water to fill up a room. That's pretty simple, and that's what we're going to be doing in this area. But I'm going to be doing it in a very creative way and off of a way that I remember from a movie. I'm not going to say what movie it is because I don't want to give away what my puzzle's going to be, because I feel like it's going to be pretty unique. But we'll see. Maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but one thing that you want to know when you're making a mod is do not tell anybody what your ideas are, because people do listen even when you don't think that they're listening, and they will steal your ideas, because I've had ideas stolen, and honestly, it's too, the coincidences are too great for it to be a coincidence, if that makes sense. So and some of the main puzzles in Black Mesa are usually consist of what is it called? It's like a valve. I don't know why it took me forever to come up with that, but most of them are valve-based puzzles. Like, they all use valves. So, I mean, and that's the most simple fucking way you could make a puzzle. That is literally the most simple way you could make a puzzle. And if every puzzle in the game is based off of that, then you're not gonna feel like a genius solving puzzles in the game. And they don't really, you know, ramp up in difficulty as you get further into the game. So, that's kind of my goal with this modification that I'm working on, this game. It's a modification, but it's gonna be full length, so that's why I kind of call it a mod in a game. But generally speaking, you want to create puzzles that make the player feel like they're actually solving something that isn't, you know, just a valve puzzle, or just you know, you want to make them feel like they're solving something different every time. You want to make each puzzle unique, just like every combat scenario is unique, if that makes sense. So, and that'll keep the game as fresh as it possibly can. And that's kind of what the idea is in this area. You can see I'm kind of moving these yellow big blocks that are that have no draw on them. And if you're a new developer to the Source Engine, no draw is essentially just how you tell the game to not render a texture or render a face. So if I were to compile this and come out to this area, I wouldn't be able to see any of this. I would be able to see inside the map. If you've ever glitched out of the map in any game and notice how you can see into the map, but when you're inside the map, you can't see out of it. That's because the faces have been removed for optimization, because there's no reason to have any sort of faces on the outside of the map, because the player technically shouldn't be outside of the map, if that makes sense. So that's why we use no draw. It's one of the simplest optimization methods, and honestly, it doesn't have that much of an impact nowadays with how hardware is on computers, but it's a good practice to always be using no draw. So for this area, I kind of want to create a texture, or use a texture that kind of makes sense with like a pump room for water or something. So I think, but as you can see, we kind of made this area seem kind of very gritty and abandoned, and like it hasn't been used. And for the player to even get in this area, they're gonna have to be breaking some wood on like a door that has been locked up for quite a while. So when they come in, it's gonna be a very gritty area, and maybe even have some steps break and stuff. So I think we're just gonna want some sort of concrete A thing about texture scheming is it kind of, you want it to try and make as much sense as possible with the area that you're working with, but you're also trying to keep the theme of the game that you're making. So like it wouldn't make sense. I mean, it would make sense to use gritty Half-Life 2 textures, but the fact that we're making a mod in Black Mesa makes it so we can't really do that, because people who are playing the mod, if they, some of the Half-Life 2 textures are pretty like obvious that they're Half-Life 2 textures. Like some people might not be able to figure that out, but most people playing Black Mesa are, you know, fans enough to know what is a BM texture, what is a Black Mesa texture, and what is a Half-Life 2 texture. Like, this is a Half-Life 2 texture, this, all of this. I mean, these are all Half-Life 2 textures. But if there's an interesting way that you can use them in mixture with some other textures from Black Mesa, then you can make it work out. But so I think what we're going to want to do is we're going to try and make it kind of a split. A split texture. It's kind of hard to figure out what we're going to try and do. So enable to duplicate walls in Hammer. You just take a wall that you want to duplicate, or whatever geometry you've made, and you hold shift, and then you just, while holding shift, you just click, and while still holding shift, you take it where the general area you want to place it, let go of the click, then let go of shift, and then you have a duplicate wall. And this is the exact same length of a wall. So learning how the hotkeys and stuff work is very, very helpful in Hammer. But it just like learning the hotkeys in Blender is very helpful, because Blender, I mean, Blender is another one that's pretty difficult to learn anything in if you don't know what the hotkeys are. So I kind of like how there's like an open kind of area right here. And to make the geometry more intricate and seem, you know, more like a facility, I'm going to shift click again, duplicate this wall, and drag it all the way back so it's not clipping in here, because if you look in here, it's going to be clipping here. Alright, so we kind of want to just drag the wall out, put it right here, and to make sure that the wall that you have is completely no-drawed for the best optimization, like for example, I'll put this here. And sometimes when you copy walls, it'll have faces on it that you weren't paying attention to. Like, I'm sure there's some faces in this map. Wherever they are, they're hidden. Because they can be hidden like this, where they're kind of under or below. Like, some of them could be like that. And you just will never see that, you know? And there's no way to really catch on to it. But that's why you kind of just want to optimize it as best as you can. When you copy a wall, sometimes it'll have a face like this, and just to ensure that the wall that you copied is well optimized, all you have to do is, after copying it, is you just do Shift, Alt, hold Shift and Alt, and then right click while holding Shift and Alt. And now we're gonna look behind it, and you'll notice that it's no drawed now. But you have to be touching a face that is no drawed on the geometry. Like for example, if we decided to make it concrete and then we did Shift Alt right click, then you see that it's painting the entire thing, that texture. So it's a good way to make something have all of the texture if you want it to have all of the texture. But for no draw, and you could touch something else that's no draw, and then Shift Alt right click, and it's going to share that texture, and it's going to be completely textured that. And I find that particularly helpful with optimization, because you can do it with no draw, so it's very helpful. So we're just going to keep we're going to keep duplicating these walls, because I kind of want this room to have like a boiler room-esque kind of look to it. And I feel like it should have a taller ceiling. Maybe with some balconies and stuff. Not balconies, but catwalks, you know? And maybe some garages. Like here will be a garage door of some kind. And that's kind of the main idea about mapping. You don't necessarily need to plan everything out. You just need to kind of think in your head what you would want, you know, and try to make that. It's really is as simple as that. If you've ever played something like Minecraft, I know that's a pretty horrible thing to compare this to, because Minecraft and this are they're leagues apart. But it truly is that. I mean, if you play Minecraft and you make something, you know how to make it, you know what blocks to use. In this, it's more complex. Obviously, you need to learn how everything works, and how it's going to translate to the engine after compile. But, when coming up with things, when coming up with ideas, it really is as simple as that. Surprisingly. At least for me. Some people do, and if you're a part of a bigger modding team, then it's probably preferable for you to, you know, plan things out, because you're working with many other people, and able to have maps accurately translate from one to another. Like, one map is gonna be just all fucking red brick. Somebody makes it all red brick, and then the next map, you made it, like, made of tile, you know? Like, the transition between those two is not gonna make any sense. So, if you are working with others, it is really good to plan things out. If you're working on your own, it's good to plan things out, but you don't necessarily need to draw and sketch every single fucking thing that you're working on, you know? Sometimes it just takes a little imagination, it just takes a little thinking, knowing how everything works, obviously, how to put things together. But most of all, once you know how everything works, how the engine translates things, how it compiles, how you make things in Hammer, and how you use the hotkeys, then you can make areas as simple as you could in a game like Minecraft. Like, quite literally. And how I do that, how I flip the objects really fast instead of having to, you know, go into this and then twisting it. You just do Control M, and it'll let you rotate along the x-axis, or Z, Y, and X. You can scale, you can move, you can teleport. I've never really used the move, scale, or teleport. Moving's pretty easy. I don't know why anybody would need it to teleport. My friend Jimmy, he's gotten really good with using scale, the scale tool, and that's how he keeps a lot of stuff on grid. And it's very important to have things on grid for the most part, because if you have things that are like micro brushes or they're off grid, Hammer likes to kind of place those into different areas, and it becomes an absolute fucking nightmare. And I would love to talk about, you know, all of the different things that you can do with Hammer, and I would be sitting here for literally days talking to you about it. All the bad things that can happen with Hammer as well. But another thing is that we usually can't compile with Hammer++, because Hammer++, the application we're using right now to edit this, it is not, you know, the standard application that works with BM, Black Mesa. If you get Hammer++, you'll see that it's either you can get it for Source SDK, you can get it for TF2 or Counter-Strike, but Black Mesa is not one of the supported games. But there is a way to get it supported through symbolic links and using the Source SDK 2013 version. So I don't know if they've actually made a BM version now, because it's been some time, but I doubt it. I doubt it. So what we're gonna do here is I'll just copy this. Do that. I keep touching my microphone, so sorry if it's making a lot of noises. But we don't want it to touch all the way up here, because that would just kind of be... I don't know, that just doesn't seem right to me. You gotta use your proper judgment when making maps, too. You gotta kind of think to yourself what seems realistic and what doesn't seem realistic. And I feel like this kind of reaching only halfway up to this next floor, this floor right here, makes more sense than it going all the way to the top. So, and that's just me. Some people have different logic for how things are built and stuff, so... And see, we've made our first little roof plane. And something that people don't understand about building these maps is you have to seal them. Everybody wonders, anybody who starts mapping, you know, does not get that concept right off the bat. Like, nobody. I sure as shit didn't. I had plenty of maps that were leaking until I watched plenty of YouTube tutorials, and every mapper annoyingly says, seal your map, seal your fucking map. And a lot of people, like, when you first start, you're like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to seal your map? And it just means that there cannot be any holes in the map. So if I were to do this, I mean, forget about all this, obviously. Just imagine that there's all walls here. Wall here. There's no other, you know, way out into this open abyss area. And there's just this. If I compile the map is not going to compile the lighting or the models or the cube maps correctly, because there's a huge hole in the map that's allowing it to see into the void, into this area. This will all be black when you compile it. It's just showing the skybox because that's a feature of Hammer++. But if we close this like that, now we have sealed our map. Now the lighting, cube maps, reflections, models will all compile correctly without any sort of glitches. I mean, there may be other things that could cause some glitches, and usually that indicates a leak. But sometimes that's not always the case. That's why you gotta really look closely at your compile log. But, I think the reason I bring up that we need to compile in regular Hammer for Black Mesa, and we can't do it for Hammer++, is because Hammer++ doesn't care about micro brushes. And it doesn't care about off-grid things. It can usually handle it pretty well. But you want to make sure everything is on-grid, especially for regular Hammer. Because if you take this VMF file, this whole map that I'm working on, and import it into Hammer, regular Hammer, to actually compile it in Black Mesa, it's going to start shifting micro brushes. It's going to start shifting things that aren't on grid, and sometimes it won't always do that, but Most of the time it will, and it will be the most frustrating shit you've ever experienced in your life, I can assure you. I fucking can assure you. It is just... Nothing makes you feel worse than when Hammer fucking literally screws up hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of your work. So... I kind of don't like how this is like this. So I'm gonna do this and move this over. Even though it won't, you know, be within the blocks that I'm looking at on grid. I think it's better to do it this way because then it kind of looks better on the outside. And that's kind of an OCD thing. Sometimes shit doesn't matter. You just need to make sure your map is sealed. Sometimes it's just OCD. You're probably wondering why I'm just making it all no draw. I just kind of want a general conceptualization of the area that I'm working on, and then I can start working on the texture scheme. Because sometimes you want to split an entire area in half and able to get a nice texture scheme. Because usually you kind of want to mix textures together to create a scheme. You don't just want, like, for example, if I made the entire area this and only this across all the walls, that would be more boring than adding a secondary texture and making kind of a texture scheme for an area. And that's what Black Mesa does very well in Half-Life 2, but Half-Life 2 kind of just lazily slaps some shit together, but it still looks good. We still say it's one of the greatest games of all time, so at least I do. And a couple million other people. But that's kind of why I'm doing this the way I'm doing it, so. Do that. Oop. You can see we've left a little leak there. There we go. So we're gonna need to create a ceiling for this little section too. Sometimes you can just copy and paste it and it's much easier. If you paste it onto the actual blocks that you're working on, then it'll just be snug to the blocks and you can just kind of move it along the x-axis and y-axis. Because the z-axis is technically the depth of the graph. So if I were to move it like this, that's the z-axis. And it's okay if you don't get all of this information in one sitting. This is just kind of a nice little way for me to kind of show off how I make certain things in Hammer. And I'm no master. God, no, I am no master. There are people who are just so fucking phenomenal with Hammer. It is just unbelievable. It is unfathomable. I think I'll keep it that way and put a door here. But here I kind of want like a garage door kind of thing going on. And we don't need to have the actual door there yet. We're just gonna make the hole for the door. Like that. There we go. See, now this area is starting to look like it's kind of something. So now we can kind of worry about actually texture scheming it now, so. If we want to kind of split the area into multiple textures, we're gonna have to do this, where we select everything. Well, I think first what we should do is pick a texture on a normal scale. So you can see we kind of chose this texture. I know this is a Half-Life 2 texture, but for the area that I'm making right now, this would be a pretty good choice, I feel like. It doesn't have to all be this texture. But I'm gonna do fit. And what we're gonna do is, this looks very stretched out, but we're gonna pull out a calculator. And we want it to be evenly distributed, so there's no cutting or anything. We know that's what the Y Y variable needs to be. But we need to divide this X variable. I can't paste it, so we'll just do 1.5273. And we'll do divided by 4. And that's our answer. That's what we need for. We're going to copy this, and hopefully it allows us to actually paste it into X. And now center. Right? Oops. We'll kind of slowly nudge it into place. Like that. And it doesn't look bad. Yeah, that looks pretty good. See, you kind of have to be a little mathematical about it too. It takes some kind of understanding. I mean, that's simple math, don't get me wrong, but yeah, we'll do this. That looks nice. May not look perfect, but now we'll do some different kind of texture along the walls. Yeah, that doesn't look very good. It looks a little too clean. What about this? Yeah, that looks pretty dirty. Wonder if we could use silo. Do 0 again, then fit. Wait, this is a control room. Let's take this and divide it by 4. 0.8906 divided by 4. And that's our answer. Ew. Do fit again. Let's do it divided by 2. 0.8906 divided by 2. Now copy this. Alright. Yeah, that looks a little... Yeah, that looks pretty decent. This can all change later, obviously, but... The idea is we kind of just want to get a general scheme. Because then your ideas will grow from there and get better and more refined. But you do need a starting point. A starting point is the most important part. But now we have one kind of issue, is that this ceiling part here, this is a part of the next room. And this is a part of the next room as well. And this. But that's the only problematic part. And what we just need to do is we're going to switch to no draw. And then go to the clipping tool. We're going to select this wall too, so we know where to cut. We know that this is the longer side of the wall, so what we do is we cut right along here and make sure that there's no red, because that means it's going to remove whatever side that's red. We want it just to cut both sides, and that's it. And the reason we set it to no draw is because when it makes the cut... Okay, well, it still didn't do that. Never mind. So we're gonna have to automatically... Usually, if you set it to no draw, it'll already cut it the way you need it to be cut. Where it adds... See how it kind of added these bricks? And we don't want that, because the player's never gonna see this. This is inside of the floor. So we want to make sure that this is no drawed. But usually, if you set it... I think what you do is you set your texture, your current texture, to no draw, and then you select the things that you're gonna cut, and then you cut them, and that's how you get it to be no draw. But we've fixed it. You just gotta be you gotta pay attention to stuff like that. It's not a big deal if you miss it, and that's why we kind of do our best to no draw everything else, but shit like that can sneak up on you, and that's how textures get snuck into the walls, honestly. That's really the only way. But you can see we've cut it, and it's not affecting this side. This texture is still this texture, and this ceiling is a total different texture, and now we can choose it to be whatever we want it to be. So we're gonna look up some ceiling textures. Let's try this one. I don't know why it has to be. Let's do 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. Well, maybe we want this ceiling to be this texture, and this ceiling to be something else, because it's so dark. I don't know if I'm really liking this ceiling texture, but really don't know if we even have a choice. That actually looks better. I like that. It's not like pitch black like the ceiling, but it's its own thing. I wonder if we can find something that's more Black Mesa. I kind of like that for some reason. I have no idea why, but I just feel like they kind of like mix together just a little bit, and they change it up just enough. If we did that, yeah, that looks pretty interesting. I don't usually do stuff like that, but I don't know. It just seems like I found two textures that are kind of they can be used beside each other. Alright. And what if we just use the regular non-striped for this ceiling area? I want to do 0.25. Let's do fit now. Let's take this and divide it by like 2. Actually, we can do like by 4. 1.2188. If it's a pretty big number, you could usually do divided by 4, because it'll still result in a decently large number. Like 0.3047 is still larger than 0.25. Do left or right? I mean, left, right. Why is it not doing it? Okay, we'll do it automatically then. We want this little indent to be right here. Oh, a little too far. Sometimes it slides a bit. See how that kind of looks good when it's right along that? Very nice. And that's kind of how I texture a room generally. I mean, we'll have to look at the floor as well, but I feel like... What did we use here? This tile. Ugh. Everything's so stretched out. Kind of want to put some concrete here. Maybe for some, like, pumps and stuff to be placed on. I feel like this floor is too... It's like tan. So we need to find something that's like... not so tan. I don't know, I'm kind of liking that for some reason. What about this? This might be good. Ugh. Jesus, did somebody shove it up their ass? That's the ticket. It might be too clean though, it's like... seems just a little clean. I don't like this concrete. See, you can kind of see how you slowly figure it out based on your needs. It's like a puzzle. It's a puzzle of its own building a game, and then you have to build the puzzles to build the game. I like the way this looks, but we need to figure out just how long this little thing is right here. So, hold on. We're gonna deselect it, do no draw. Now we're gonna select it again. Now we have it like right along the line. Cut it. Turn on texture lock, it's already on. Now, move this. Like that. Oh, we need to spin it around like twice. There we go. Turn off texture lock and just kind of drag this back a little bit. Actually, keep it right there. Now we can move this guy back so it's not phasing into it. I don't know why I keep hitting my face against my mic. So now we'll turn on texture lock again. Put this one in this little slot like that. Oh, we can turn off texture lock. Okay, so now that we've done that, there's one, you'll see that there's this kind of little problem here. And how we deal with that is we use the polygon or the vertex tool. Make sure texture lock is still on. We kind of drag it across here like that. Then we go to the next one and drag this one across here like this. And now they're both going to not be phasing into each other. And it looks like they're kind of clipped together. So it gives it a much more natural look. You do it for that one, then we'll do it for this one. Like that. Beautiful. So this little thing could be used for like motors or pumps. So we'll do, just to give us an idea for later. We'll do motor. What is this? Like that. Oh. It's kind of having a hard time saving. Hopefully it doesn't crash. I think I might be saving to a USB. I don't know why I do that so often, man. Why do I keep doing that? Okay. So I think that's good enough for today. You can see what we were able to do within, you know, just working on it for an hour or so a day. So we keep doing this for like, I don't know, 300 days and we'll probably have something to say for it. So that's kind of how I go about building areas. This may not be the greatest texture scheme I've ever come up with, because, I mean, this seems like it's too dirty for this floor, and we'll figure something out. This might seem a little too dirty for this wall, and this ceiling is just grungy as hell. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we can pull off with this. And another thing that you need to bring into account is lighting. If you can get lighting correct, then you can almost make any texture scheme work together, as long as it's a reasonable texture scheme. So that's kind of what we have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you guys like these kind of videos, we'll keep making more. I kind of am gonna make more regardless, because I kind of like recording these and looking back at them and seeing what I was thinking in my mind at the time. So, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.